You can't imagine what he did to her. No one could, not unless they saw her that morning. Not unless they saw the blood dried into her skin, the bruises swallowing her arms, the shame in her eyes that no dust could hide. Evelyn was just 23, too young to carry the weight of horror, too old to still be called a child, and ever since her mother died, she'd been trapped in a house that never felt like home. He was her stepfather. The neighbors stopped asking about her a long time ago. Every time they heard shouting from that house, they just turned the lanterns down. In a small town, silence is sometimes the cruelest thing of all. A man whose breath reeked of whiskey and whose soul reeked of rot. He didn't raise her. He kept her, like an animal behind walls and locked doors. He started with words, then fists, then nights that lasted too long. And on that night, the night the desert held its breath, he came home worse than usual. Bottles swinging in one hand, madness burning behind his eyes. She tried to run. He caught her. She begged. He didn't listen. The struggle was brutal. The floor shook. The air was split with sounds no one should ever hear. Wood cracked, fabric tore, her breath disappeared. When it was over, Evelyn couldn't move. She stared at the ceiling like it might swallow her. But she didn't cry. She had cried too much. Instead, she crawled to the door, then to the edge of the porch, then into the wild. No shoes, no plan, just pain. The dry earth scraped her knees. Cactus needles stung her thighs. Her torn clothes hung from her shoulders like dust. She didn't know how long she'd been walking. The stars above blurred into one long streak of light. Every sound made her flinch, a coyote, the wind, her own heartbeat. But still she walked, because stopping meant remembering. At some point, they fell away completely. Her body was all cuts and bruises now. Open wounds over old scars. Even the moon seemed to look away. She wandered through the night, alone and broken. By sunrise, she collapsed near the edge of a dusty trail. Her breath was shallow. Her skin burned from the rising sun. That's when she heard hooves, a shadow, a man, a horse. He was tall, older, built like a wall of stone. His face was worn by time and war. His clothes dusty like the land he came from. A red scarf around his neck, his hand resting gently on the holster at his side. He wasn't just a rancher. He was something else. Something colder. Something quieter. Evelyn gasped. She grabbed the closest thing she could find, dried palm leaves. She wrapped them around her body as best she could, dropped behind a bush. Trembling, her eyes met his. She didn't speak at first, didn't know how. But then, the words broke free. I'm begging you. Hurry up. She wasn't even sure what she was asking for. Hurry and leave. Hurry and forget she ever existed. Hurry before she broke apart again. But he didn't turn away. He didn't say a word. He took one step forward. And her heart stopped. Who was this man? Would he hurt her too? Or was he the first soul in years who'd do the unthinkable not with violence, but with kindness? In a place where monsters wore familiar faces, could a stranger become the only safe thing left? Or was that just another lie waiting to happen? When he first saw her, Thomas didn't think. He just moved. Years of soldier instinct told him she needed help, so he pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around her, careful not to scare her more. She trembled like a leaf in the wind. Her skin was cold, her eyes empty, her lips cracked. He didn't ask questions. He didn't say a word. He just lifted her gently, carried her to his horse, and rode toward the ranch. The ride was quiet. Only the wind spoke. Her head rested against his chest, and for the first time in years, Thomas felt something alive in his heart again. He had carried wounded men before, but this felt different. This wasn't duty anymore. This was something he didn't have a name for. When they reached his ranch, he laid her on an old couch by the fireplace. He lit the fire, boiled water, and brought out clean cloth. She watched him through tired eyes, not knowing if she should trust him. He didn't look at her the way other men did. He just kept working, steady hands, quiet breathing. Later, when she woke, she found herself wrapped in a blanket that smelled like cedar and smoke. Thomas sat across the room, staring into the fire. He didn't move, didn't talk, just sat there like a statue of silence. She whispered, barely audible, "Why are you helping me?" He looked up, met her eyes for a second, then said, "Because somebody once helped me." She didn't know what to say. For a moment, there was peace, the kind that feels fragile, like glass about to break. Days passed. Thomas cooked simple meals, fixed her wounds, and spoke little. She started to ask about him, about the medals on the wall, about the scars on his arms. He told her bits and pieces, how he had fought wars that took everything from him, how he came out alive but lost the will to stay among people. The ranch was his exile. Until she showed up, Evelyn started to help around the place, cleaning, cooking, trying to give something back. Sometimes she smiled, just for a second, and Thomas noticed. He pretended not to. But he did. At night, she still woke up screaming. He never went to her room, but she knew he was sitting awake by the fire, waiting until she fell silent again. Two broken people learning how to breathe in the same space, neither asking too much, neither running away, but peace never lasts long in the wild. Because somewhere out there a man was asking questions. He wanted to know where the girl went, and he was willing to kill to find her. What happens when the past rides back into town? Will Thomas protect her again, or lose everything twice? For a few weeks, life at the ranch felt almost normal. Evelyn laughed again, though never for long. Thomas fixed the fence, fed the horses, and pretended the world outside the gate did not exist. But peace in the wild is like smoke. It looks solid until the wind shifts. One afternoon, the sky turned gray, and the wind carried dust across the hills. Thomas was stacking hay when he saw a figure walking down the dirt road. Slow steps, heavy boots. Something in the way the man moved told him it wasn't good news. Evelyn looked from the window and froze. The color drained from her face. She didn't need to speak his name. Thomas already knew. The man came closer. His clothes were torn, eyes red, mouth twisted with hate. He stopped by the fence, gripped the post, and said in a low growl, "You hiding her here, old man?" Thomas didn't answer. He set down the pitchfork, wiped his hands, and walked toward the gate. The wind caught his hat, but he didn't blink. "She's safe here," he said. "You best turn around," the man laughed, a dry and broken sound. "You think you can keep her from me?" Evelyn stepped out onto the porch. Her hands shook, but her eyes were clear. "Go away," she said. "You've done enough." That only made him angrier. He pushed open the gate, stormed toward her. Thomas moved faster than a man his age should. He grabbed the man by the collar, shoved him back hard. For a second they stared at each other, both breathing heavy, both remembering different wars. Then the man swung first. Thomas blocked, then hit back, a short, hard fight. The kind that ends before you realize it started. When it was done, the man lay in the dust, blood on his lip, pride shattered. Thomas pointed to the road. "You come back here again, and you won't walk away next time." The man spat, crawled to his feet, and backed away. But before he left, he looked up at Evelyn with eyes that burned. "This ain't over," he said. Then he turned and disappeared into the storm. Inside, Evelyn sat by the fire, shaking but alive. Thomas poured her a cup of water, his hand still trembling. "He'll be back," she whispered. Thomas nodded. Let him try. That night, the wind never stopped blowing. Every creak of the barn made Thomas reach for his gun. He didn't sleep, neither did the desert. Outside, thunder rolled over the hills, the calm before the next storm had begun. If you're still here, take a sip of your tea. Tell me what time it is, where you are, and where you're listening from. And if you want to know what happens when he returns, hit subscribe, stay close, and don't blink. The wind carried the smell of rain that morning. Thomas felt it before he saw the clouds. Storms always came twice in the desert, once from the sky, once from the past. Evelyn was hanging laundry behind the barn when she heard the sound. Hoofbeats again. Not one horse this time, two, fast, determined. Thomas stepped out of the workshop, shotgun in hand, his face tight. He didn't need to ask who it was. Some men you can hear before you see. The riders stopped at the gate. One was the man he'd already beaten. The other was taller, cleaner, and far more dangerous, a face that smiled without warmth. Evelyn whispered, "That's him." He buys people. Thomas felt something dark twist in his chest, not fear, anger. The man in the hat tipped his head, calling out, "Hand her over, old man." "We'll be gone before sunset." Thomas raised the shotgun. "Not a chance." The man laughed softly. "Didn't think so." Then everything exploded. The first shot tore through the air. Splinters flew from the barn wall. Evelyn ducked behind the trough, grabbed the small rifle Thomas had taught her to use. Her hand shook, but her aim was steady. Thomas moved like the soldier he used to be. He fired once, then again. One of the horses bolted. The taller man dove for cover. The stepfather crawled toward the fence, cursing through his teeth. It was chaos. Smoke, shouting, the sharp smell of gunpowder. Evelyn called out, "Thomas, to your right." He turned just in time. The taller man was rushing him with a knife. Thomas blocked with the stock of his gun and swung hard. The man fell back, stunned. The stepfather froze, hands in the air, shaking. Evelyn stepped forward, eyes cold now, voice steady. "It's over." She kept the rifle pointed until Thomas reached for the rope, tied their hands, and led them to the fence. By the time the sheriff arrived, the storm had broken. Rain washed the blood and dust into the ground. Two men in cuffs, heads down, silent for once. The sheriff looked at Thomas. "You did the right thing." Thomas nodded, eyes on Evelyn. She was soaked from the rain, hair sticking to her face, but there was a quiet strength in her now. Something had changed. Something that would not break again. As the wagons rolled away, Thomas stood beside her under the gray sky. "You can breathe now," he said. She smiled faintly. Maybe for the first time, the wind calmed, the rain slowed. And for the first time in years, the ranch felt like a home again. But peace never stays long in a land like this. Because sometimes, even when justice is done, the ghosts still find a way back. The rain stopped, but the wind carried a sound. A horse somewhere far off. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe it was the start of something worse. The storm had passed. The land smelled of wet earth and smoke. The sun pushed through the gray sky, spilling light over the ranch. Everything looked new again, even the air. Thomas stood by the fence, watching the horizon. The sheriff's wagons were gone. The men who had brought darkness into their lives were locked away, far from here. For the first time in years, Thomas felt peace that did not scare him. Inside, Evelyn was making coffee. Her hand still shook sometimes, but her eyes were brighter. She had started to hum again, small tunes that drifted through the old wooden house. Thomas listened, pretending not to. That sound was better than silence. Days turned into weeks. The wounds healed, though the scars stayed. Sometimes she talked about leaving, starting over somewhere else. Thomas never stopped her. He just said, "Wherever you go, make it better than where you came from." She smiled at that. It was the kind of smile that comes from pain and gratitude mixed together. The kind that says, "I made it through." Thomas started fixing the roof, one board at a time. Evelyn planted flowers near the barn, small, white ones. He teased her for it, said the desert would eat them in a week. She said, "Maybe, but I'll plant more." It became their way of living. He built things that might break. She grew things that might die, both knowing that trying was what kept them human. One evening, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Evelyn looked out at the fields, quiet for a while, then asked, "Do you ever think people can really start over?" Thomas thought about it, about the war, about the years he spent running from his own ghost. Then he said, "I think starting over isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without letting it kill you." She nodded slowly. The orange light hit her face, soft and warm. Maybe that was enough of an answer. The world moved on, but the story stayed, because out here, every scar tells one. And every story like theirs asks the same question. How far can you run before you finally decide to stop running? What would you forgive if it meant you could breathe again? Maybe the lesson is simple, that no matter how broken life becomes, someone can still walk beside you through the wreckage, not to fix it, just to make sure you keep walking. As the last light faded, Evelyn whispered, "Thank you, Thomas." He didn't answer, just smiled, tipping his hat toward the sky. Some words don't need to be said when both hearts already know. And maybe that's what this story really was, not about pain, but about finding peace when you least expect it. If you've stayed with me through the dust and the storm, take a deep breath. Maybe peace isn't something you find. Maybe it's something you build, one day at a time, with calloused hands and a tired heart. Out here, under the wide sky, even the broken things can bloom again. Look around. Maybe your story isn't over either. And if this tale touched something in you, let me know. Drop a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe so you can ride with us on the next story from the Wild West. Because sometimes the next sunrise brings more than just light. It brings another chance.